Matilda of Scotland, born Edith, was Queen of England as the first wife of King Henry I. Early life: Matilda was born around 1080 in Dunfermline, the daughter of Malcolm III of Scotland and St Margaret. She was christened Edith, and Robert Curthose, Duke of Normandy, stood as godfather at the ceremony. The English Queen Matilda of Flanders was also present at the baptismal font and served as her godmother. Baby Matilda pulled at Queen Matilda's headdress, which was seen as an omen that the younger Matilda would be queen one day. The life of St Margaret, Queen of Scotland, was later written for Matilda, possibly by Turgot of Durham. It refers to Matilda's childhood and her relationship with her mother. In it, Margaret is described as a strict but loving mother. She did not spare the rod when it came to raising her children in virtue, which the author presupposed was the reason for the good behavior Matilda and her siblings displayed, and Margaret also stressed the importance of piety. When she was about 6 years old, Matilda of Scotland and her sister Mary were sent to Romsey Abbey, near Southampton, where their Aunt Christina was abbess. During her stay at Romsey and, some time before 1093, at Wilton Abbey, both institutions known for learning, the Scottish princess was much sought after as a bride. Refusing proposals from William de Warenne, 2nd Earl of Surrey, and Alan Rufus, Lord of Richmond. Her copyright Riemann of Tournai claimed that William Rufus considered marrying her. Her education went beyond the standard feminine pursuits. This was not surprising, as her mother was a great lover of books. Her daughters learned English, French, and some Latin, and was sufficiently literate to read St. Augustine and the Bible. In 1093, her parents betrothed her to Alan Rufus, Lord of Richmond, one of her numerous suitors. However, before the marriage took place, her father entered into a dispute with William Rufus. In response, he marauded the English king's lands, where he was surprised by Robert de Mowbray, Earl of Northumbria, and killed along with his son, Edward. Upon hearing of her husband and son's death, Margaret, already ill, died on November 16. Edith was now an orphan. She was abandoned by her betrothed, who ran off with a daughter of Harold Godwinson, Gunhild of Wessex. However, he died before they could be married. She had left the monastery by 1093, when Anselm, Archbishop of Canterbury, wrote to the Bishop of Salisbury ordering that the daughter of the King of Scotland be returned to the monastery that she had left. She did not return to Wilton until 1100, is largely unaccounted for in chronicles. Marriage: after the mysterious death of William II in August 1100, his brother, Henry, immediately seized the royal treasury and crown. His next task was to marry, and Henry's choice was Matilda. Because Matilda had spent most of her life in a convent, there was some controversy over whether she was a nun and thus canonically ineligible for marriage. Henry sought permission for the marriage from Archbishop Anselm, who returned to England in September 1100 after a long exile. Professing himself unwilling to decide so weighty a matter on his own, Anselm called a council of bishops in order to determine the canonical legality of the proposed marriage. Matilda testified that she had never taken holy vows, insisting that her parents had sent her and her sister to England for educational purposes, and her Aunt Christina had veiled her to protect her from the lust of the Normans. Matilda claimed she had pulled the veil off and stamped on it, and her aunt beat and scolded her for this act. The council concluded that Matilda was not a nun, never had been, and her parents had not intended that she become one, giving their permission for the marriage. Matilda and Henry seem to have known one another for some time before their marriage. William of Malmesbury states that Henry had long been attached to her, and Audric Vitalis says that Henry had long adored her character. It is possible that Matilda had spent some time at William Rufus's court and that the pair had met there. It is also possible Henry was introduced to his bride by his teacher Bishop Osmond. Whatever the case, it is clear that the two at least knew each other prior to their wedding. Additionally, the chronicler William of Malmesbury suggests that the new king loved his bride. Matilda's mother was the sister of Edgar VIII Ealing, proclaimed but uncrowned King of England after Harold, and, through her, Matilda was descended from Edmund Ironside and thus from the royal family of Wessex, which in the 10th century had become the royal family of a united England. This was extremely important because although Henry had been born in England, he needed a bride with ties to the ancient Wessex line to increase his popularity with the English and to reconcile the Normans and Anglo-Saxons. In their children, the two factions would be united, further unifying the new regime. Another benefit was that England and Scotland became politically closer. 3 of Matilda's brothers became kings of Scotland in succession and were unusually friendly towards England during this period of unbroken peace between the two nations. Alexander married one of Henry I's illegitimate daughters and David lived at Henry's court for some time before his accession. Matilda had a small dower but it did incorporate some lordship rights. Most of her dower estates were granted from lands previously held by Edith of Wessex. Additionally, Henry made numerous grants on his wife including substantial property in London. Generosity aside, this was a political move in order to win over the unruly Londoners who were vehement supporters of the Wessex kings. Queen. After Matilda and Henry were married on November 11, 1100 at Westminster Abbey by Archbishop Anselm of Canterbury, she was crowned as Matilda, a hallowed Norman name. By courtiers, however, she and her husband were soon nicknamed Godric and Godiva. These two names were typical English names from before the conquest and mocked their more rustic style, especially when compared to the flamboyance of William II. She gave birth to a daughter, Matilda, born in February 1102, and a son, William, called Adelin, in November 1103. As queen, she resided primarily at Westminster, but accompanied her husband on his travels around England, and, circa 1106–1107, probably visited Normandy with him. Matilda was the designated head of Henry's curia and acted as regent during his frequent absences. During the English investiture controversy, she acted as intercessor between her husband and Archbishop Anselm. She wrote several letters during Anselm's absence, first asking him for advice and to return, but later increasingly to mediate. Works. Matilda had great interest in architecture and instigated the building of many Norman-style buildings, including Waltham Abbey and Holy Trinity Aldgate. She also had the first arched bridge in England built, at Stratford-le-Bow, as well as a bathhouse with piped-in water and public lavatories at Queenhithe. Her court was filled with musicians and poets. She commissioned the monk, possibly Thurgot, to write a biography of her mother, Saint Margaret. She was an active queen and, like her mother, was renowned for her devotion to religion and the poor. William of Malmesbury describes her as attending church barefoot at Lent, and washing the feet and kissing the hands of the sick. Matilda exhibited a particular interest in leprosy, founding at least 2 leper hospitals, including the institution that later became the parish church of St. Giles in the Fields. She also administered extensive dower properties and was known as a patron of the arts, especially music. Death. After Matilda died on May 1, 1118 at Westminster Palace, she was buried at Westminster Abbey. The death of her son, William Adelin, in the tragic disaster of the White Ship and Henry's failure to produce a legitimate son from his second marriage led to the succession crisis of the anarchy. Legacy. After her death, she was remembered by her subjects as Matilda the Good Queen, and Matilda of blessed memory, and for a time sainthood was sought for her, though she was never canonized. Matilda is also thought to be the identity of the fair lady mentioned at the end of each verse in the nursery rhyme London Bridge is Falling Down. The post-Norman conquest English monarchs to the present day are related to the Anglo-Saxon House of Wessex monarchs via Matilda of Scotland as she was the great-granddaughter of King Edmund Ironside, see House of Wessex family tree. Issue. Matilda and Henry had issue. Euphemia, died young. Matilda of England, Holy Roman Empress, Countess Consort of Anjou, called Lady of the English. William Adelin, sometimes called Duke of Normandy, who married Matilda, daughter of Fulk V, Count of Anjou. Elizabeth, died young. Appearance and character. It causes pleasure to see the Queen whom no woman equals in beauty of body or face, hiding her body, nevertheless, in a veil of loose clothing. Here alone, with new modesty, wishes to conceal it, but what gleams with its own light cannot be hidden and the sun, penetrating his clouds, hurls his rays. She also had fluent, honeyed speech. From a poem of Mabodius of Rennes. Notes and sources: she is known to have been given the name Edith at birth, and was baptized under that name. She is known to have been crowned under a name favored by the Normans, Matilda, and was referred to as such throughout her husband's reign. It is unclear, however, when her name was changed, or why. Accordingly, her later name is used in this article. Historians generally refer to her as Matilda of Scotland. In popular usage, she is referred to equally as Matilda, or Edith. Hunnicutt, Lois. Matilda of Scotland, A Study in Medieval Queenship. Woodbridge, The Boydell Press. Pa. Tenor, The Life of St. Margaret, Queen of Scotland. Retrieved March 14, 2011. Hollister 2001 128. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort. New York City, New York, Pegasus Books LLC PA 42. ISBN A978-1-60598-105-5. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort PPA 42 Euro 43. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort. PA 43. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort. PA 45. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort PPA 44 Euro 45. Hollister 2001 126. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort PPA 46 Euro 47. Hunnicutt. Matilda of Scotland, A Study in Medieval Queenship. PA 73. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort. PA 50. Hunnicutt. Matilda of Scotland, A Study in Medieval Queenship. PA 76. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort. PA 53. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort. PA 63. Hilton, Lisa. Queen Consort PPA 47 Euro 48. References: Chibnall, Marjorie. The Empress Matilda, Queen Consort, Queen Mother, and Lady of the English, 1992, Hilton, Lisa. Queen's Consort, England's Medieval Queens from Eleanor of Aquitaine to Elizabeth of York, 2010 New York City, New York, Pegasus Books LLC. Hollister, Warren C. Henry I, 2001, Parsons, John Carmy. Medieval Mothering, 1996, Parsons, John Carmy. Medieval Queenship, 1997, Hunnicutt, Lois L. Matilda of Scotland, A Study in Medieval Queenship, 2004. From a Poem of Mabodius of Rennes. External links: Medieval Women, The Life of St. Margaret, Queen of Scotland by Turgot, Bishop of St Andrews ed. William Forbes Leith, S.J. 3rd edition. Edinburgh, David Douglas, 1896. Retrieved March 14, 2011. Women's biography, Matilda of Scotland, Queen of the English, contains several letters sent and received by Queen Matilda.